I never expected my life to change the day I posted that roommate wanted at 27, I just landed a position as a marketing manager at a tech startup in Boston, and the salary was good, but the city's rental prices were brutal. Hence, the ad professional seeking roommate for two apartment in South End must be clean, quiet, and employed. Among the responses, one stood out: Jack Parker, 29. Financial analyst looking to move closer to his new job, J downtown. His email was articulate and professional, including references and a brief personal introduction that made me smile. When we met for coffee to discuss the arrangement, I was struck by how he didn't match my mental image of a financial analyst. Instead of the stuffy suit I'd expected, Jack wore dark jeans and a well-fitted navy sweater that brought out his blue eyes. His dirty blonde hair was stylishly messy, and he had a warm, infectious laugh. "So Daniel," he said, stirring his Americano, "what made you choose the South End?" "The architecture. Honestly, all those beautiful brown stones, plus it's walkable to pretty much everything." I found myself studying the way his fingers wrapped around his coffee cup. "What about you?" "I leave Cambridge, got tired of the commute," and he hesitated, "needed a fresh start after my breakup." Something in his tone made me curious, but I didn't pry. Instead, we discussed practical matters: rent split, utilities, cleaning schedules. By the end of our meeting, I had a good feeling about him. 2 weeks later, Jack moved in. The apartment was spacious by Boston standards, with high ceilings and large windows. We each had our own bathroom, which I considered essential for roommate harmony. The shared spaces, living room, kitchen, and small balcony, were well appointed with a mix of my existing furniture and pieces Jack brought. Our routines meshed surprisingly well. Jack was an early riser who went to the gym before work, while I preferred evening workouts. He cooked elaborate breakfasts on weekends, filling the apartment with the smell of coffee and bacon. I handled dinner most weeknights, having discovered a passion for cooking during the pandemic. "This is incredible," Jack said one evening, taking a bite of the coca van I'd made. "Where did you learn to cook like this?" I shrugged, pleased by the compliment. "YouTube and lots of practice. The lockdown had to be good for something, right?" He laughed, and I found myself watching the way his eyes crinkled at the corners. It was becoming a habit, these little observations about Jack: how he hummed while doing dishes, how he always remembered to water the plants, how his presence in the apartment made it feel more like home. One Saturday morning, about 2 months into our cohabitation, I stumbled into the kitchen to find Jack making pancakes shirtless. After his workout, I'd seen him without a shirt before we lived together. After all, but something about the morning light playing across his shoulders made me pause. "Morning," he said, flipping a pancake with practiced ease. "Coffee's ready." I forced myself to move, to act normal, but my heart was racing. What was wrong with me? Jack was my roommate, my friend, and I wasn't even gay. Was I? But over the next few weeks, I couldn't shake these new feelings. I noticed everything about him: the scent of his cologne lingering in the bathroom after his shower, the sound of his keys in the door when he came home from work, the way he looked in a suit's heading to the office. One evening, I was working late on my laptop in the living room when Jack came home looking troubled. "Rough day?" I asked as he collapsed onto the couch beside me. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I'd learned meant he was stressed. "Had dinner with my XO." I tried to keep my voice neutral, ignoring the tightness in my chest. "The one from Cambridge." Jack was quiet for a long moment. "Yeah, Michael." The word hung in the air between us. "Michael, a man's name." My mind raced, processing this new information while trying to maintain a neutral expression. "He wanted to try again." Jack continued, staring at the ceiling. "Said he's changed, that he misses me." "What did you say?" My voice sounded strange to my own ears. I said no. Jack turned to look at me, his expression vulnerable. "I hope this doesn't make things weird between us. I should have told you I was gay when we first met, but it's fine." I interrupted, perhaps too quickly. "Really, it doesn't change anything." But it did change everything, though not in the way Jack probably feared. It opened a door in my mind I'd been keeping firmly shut, forcing me to confront questions about myself I'd been avoiding for years. That night, I lay Awake in bed thinking about past relationships with women that had never felt quite right about the way my heart raced when Jack smiled at me about the possibility that at 27 I was only now discovering who I really was. Life continued normally on the surface. We still shared meals, watched movies, and maintained our comfortable routines, but there was a new undercurrent of awareness, at least on my part. I caught myself staring at Jack when he wasn't looking, imagining what it would be like to kiss him, to run my fingers through his hair one rainy Sunday afternoon. About a week after Jack's revelation, we were both home. I was reading on the couch while Jack worked on his laptop at the dining table. Thunder rumbled outside, and the power flickered. Maybe we should save our electronics, Jack suggested, closing his laptop. He joined me on the couch, picking up the thriller he'd been reading. We sat in comfortable silence as the storm intensified. Then, with a tremendous crack of thunder, the power went out completely. "I'll get some candles," Jack said, using his phone's flashlight to navigate to the kitchen. Soon the living room was bathed in warm candlelight. Jack sat closer than before, sharing the light too. Read by, I could feel the heat from his body, smell his cologne. The intimacy of the moment was overwhelming. "Can I ask you something?" I said, suddenly, my heart pounding. "Of course, how did you know that you were gay?" Jack put down his book, turning to face me in the candlelight. His eyes were dark and serious. "I think I always knew deep down, but I didn't accept it until college. Kept dating girls, trying to force myself to feel what I thought I should feel." He paused. "Why do you ask?" I swallowed hard. "I've been thinking a lot lately about myself, about feelings I've been having." "Daniel," his voice was soft, careful, "are you saying what I think you're saying?" "I don't know what I'm saying," I admitted. "Everything feels confusing right now, except how I feel when I'm with you." The silence that followed was deafening. Jack's expression was unreadable in the flickering candlelight. Then slowly he reached out and touched my face. "Tell me if you want me to stop," he whispered, leaning in. His lips met mine, soft and questioning. It was nothing like kissing women. Jack's lips were firmer, his stubble rough against my skin, his hands strong where it cued my jaw. Everything about it felt right in a way nothing had before. When we pulled apart, we were both breathing heavily. The power chose that moment to come back on, flooding the room with harsh light. Reality crashed back in. "I should." Jack stood up abruptly. "I need some air." "I'm sorry." Before I could respond, he had grabbed his keys and jacket and was out the door, leaving me alone with my racing thoughts and tingling lips. The next few days were awkward. Jack left for work before I woke up and came home late, clearly avoiding May. When we did cross paths, our conversations were stilted and formal. Nothing like our usual easy rapport. I couldn't blame him. I had essentially dropped an emotional bomb on him, complicated our living situation, and possibly jeopardized our friendship. But the kiss had awakened something in me that couldn't be ignored. On Thursday evening, I was cooking dinner when Jack came home earlier than usual. He stood in the kitchen doorway, looking determined. "We need to talk," he said. I nodded, turning off the stove. We sat at the dining table, the tension palpable between us. "Look," Jack began, "what happened the other night? I shouldn't have kissed you. You're clearly going through something, questioning things, and I took advantage of that moment." "You didn't take advantage of anything," I interrupted. "I wanted it to happen. I've been wanting it to happen for weeks." He ran his hands through his hair in frustration. "That's exactly what I'm worried about, Daniel. Coming out questioning your sexuality. It's complicated enough without adding feelings for your roommate into the mix. I know it's complicated, but these feelings, this confusion, it's not just about you. You just helped me see something that was already there." I took a deep breath. "I've been doing a lot of thinking about my past relationships, about why they never felt right, and talking to a therapist." This surprised him. "You are started last week. She's helping me understand that maybe I've been suppressing this part of myself for a long time." "Remember Lisa, my ex from 2 years ago?" He nodded. "She once told me I kissed her like it was an obligation. At the time, I thought I was just bad at relationships. Now I'm realizing maybe I was trying to force myself to feel something that wasn't there." Jack's Expression softened. I remember feeling that way, like I was playing a part in someone else's story. Exactly, I met his eyes, but with you that kiss felt real. It felt right. Daniel, he sighed, I like you a lot more than I should given our living situation, but I'm worried about being your experimental phase, your way of figuring things out. I've been there before and it hurts. That's not what this is. I insisted. I'm not saying I have everything figured out, but I know how I feel about you is real. He was quiet for a long moment. What do you want, Daniel? Really want? I want to explore these feelings with you properly. We can take it slow, set boundaries, but I don't want to pretend that kiss didn't happen or that these feelings don't exist, and if it doesn't work out we still have to live together, then we deal with it like adults. But isn't it worth the risk? Jack stood up and walked to the window, staring out at the city lights. When he turned back, his expression had changed. Okay, he said softly, but we do this right. We take it slow and we're honest with each other. Always. Agreed. He moved close, so reaching out to touch my face like he had that night. Can I kiss you again? This time when our lips met there was no hesitation, no confusion, just certainty and a deepening hunger. His arms wrapped around me, pulling me closer, and I lost myself in the sensation of his mouth, his hands, his body pressed against mine. When we finally broke apart we were both smiling. Have dinner with me tomorrow night, he said. A proper date, not here. Somewhere neutral, like a real couple. He laughed, like two people figuring things out together. That night, lying in bed, I felt lighter than I had in years. There was still uncertainty ahead, still questions to answer and challenges to face, but for the first time I felt like I was being truly honest with myself. Our first date was at a small Italian restaurant in the North End. Jack insisted on picking me up at the apartment even though we lived together, adding a touch of formality that made it feel more real. He looked stunning in a charcoal gray suit, his hair perfectly styled. When he knocked on my bedroom door I felt like a teenager getting ready for prom. You look amazing, he said, his eyes traveling appreciatively over my navy blazer and fitted slacks. The restaurant was intimate with candlelit tables and exposed brick walls. As we settled into our seats I realized this was my first real date with a man. Jack seemed to read my thoughts. Nervous, he asked, pouring us each a glass of wine. A little, I admitted, but in a good way. Conversation flowed easily as we shared plates of handmade pasta and tiramisu. We talked about our families. His were liberal and accepting, mine were conservative Midwesterners. Our careers, our dreams. It was strange how much there was still to learn about someone I lived with. Tell me about your first relationship with a man, I asked as we walked home along the moonlit streets. Jack was quiet for a moment. It was in college. His name was Thomas. We kept it secret for almost a year before I got tired of hiding. Coming out was hard, but being honest about who I was felt incredible. He took my hand as we walked, intertwining our fingers. The simple gesture made my heart race. What about you? He asked. Were there ever thoughts before now? I considered this. There was a guy in college, David. We were close friends, and sometimes I'd catch myself staring at him, thinking about him in ways that confused me, but I pushed those feelings down, told myself it was just admiration. When we reached our apartment, there was a moment of awkwardness at the door, the traditional end of dat moment, complicated by the fact that we lived together. Would you like to come? And I joked, making Jack laugh. Instead of answering, he pulled me close and kissed me. It was different from our previous kisses, more confident, more passionate. I found myself pressing him against the door, my hands in his hair, his body warm against mine. We eventually made it inside, stumbling slightly as we tried to keep kissing while removing coats and shoes. When we reached the living room, Jack pulled back, his breathing heavy. We should slow down, he said, though his darkened eyes suggested he wanted anything but. You're right, I agreed. Reluctantly, slow, he kissed me softly once more before stepping back. Good night, Daniel. Watching him disappear into his bedroom was torture, but I knew he was right. We needed to do this properly. Over the next few weeks we continued dating while maintaining our roommate routine. We'd go out to dinner, to movies, to concerts, always coming home to separate bedrooms. During the day we were still roommates who shared chores and respected each other's space, but Evenings and weekends were for exploring. Our growing relationship, the physical aspect of our relationship developed. Gradually each touch, each kiss was a new discovery for me. Jack was patient letting me set the pace, always checking if I was comfortable. One night about a month after our first date, we were making out on the couch when I pulled back to look at him stay with me. Tonight I whispered, his eyes searched mine. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything. That night was a revelation. Jack was gentle, guiding me through each new experience with care and attention. Every touch, every sensation was intensified by the emotional connection we built afterward. Lying in his arms, I felt completely at peace. You okay? He murmured into my hair. More than okay, I traced patterns on his chest. Why did it take me so long to figure this out? He kissed my forehead. Everyone's journey is different. What matters is that you're being true to yourself. Now as summer turned to fall, our relationship deepened. We settled into a comfortable rhythm, finding balance between our romantic relationship and our shared living space. But we both knew we couldn't stay in our happy bubble forever. The first real test came when my parents announced they were visiting Boston. I hadn't come out to them yet, and the thought filled me with dread. We can pretend we're just roommates, Jack offered one night as we lay in bed. If you're not ready, I turned to face him. No, I don't want to hide you. Hide us. They need to know. The night before my parents arrived, I could barely sleep. Jack held me, whispering reassurances, but we both knew tomorrow would change everything. My parents arrived on a crisp October afternoon. Mom hugged me tightly while Dad carried their bags inside. The apartment is lovely, Mom said, looking around. And you must be Jack, the roommate Daniels mentioned. Jack shook their hands, perfectly polite but maintaining distance. We had agreed I should tell them alone after getting them settled. Their hotel, I took them to dinner at their favorite steakhouse. As we finished our main course, I knew it was time. Mom, Dad, I need to tell you something. My voice shook slightly. Jack isn't just my roommate, he's my boyfriend. I'm gay. The silence that followed seemed endless. Mom's fork clattered against her plate. Dad stared into his wine glass. How long have you known? Mom finally asked. I've been figuring it out over the past few months, but looking back, I think I've always known something was different. I just wasn't ready to accept it. Is this why I think didn't work out with Lisa? Dad's voice was gruff. Partly I was trying to be someone I'm not. Mom reached across the table and took my hand. Are you happy? Yes, I said without hesitation. Happier than I've ever been. Dad cleared his throat. This is unexpected. We'll need time to process this. It wasn't acceptance, but it wasn't rejection either. They met Jack properly the next day, and while things were awkward, they made an effort. Mom asked about his job, his family. Dad discussed the Red Sox with him. When they left, Mom hugged me tighter than usual. We love you, she whispered. That hasn't changed. The next challenge came from an unexpected quarter. One evening, Jack came home looking troubled. Michael contacted me again, he said as we were preparing dinner. My hands stilled on the cutting board. What did he want to meet for coffee? Said he has some things he needs to say. I tried to keep my voice neutral. Are you going to go? I think I should. For closure, he touched my arm. Come with me. The coffee shop was in Cambridge, neutral territory. Michael was already there when we arrived. He was handsome in a polished way, and I felt a stab of insecurity. Jack, Michael stood, then noticed me. And you must be Daniel. The conversation was tense but civil. Michael apologized for how things ended, acknowledged his mistakes. Then he looked at us both. You seem happy together, he said quietly. I'm glad. As we walked home, Jack squeezed my hand. Thank you for coming. Thank you for wanting me there. That night, as we lay tangled together in bed, Jack propped himself up on an elbow to look at me. I love you, he said simply. My heart soared. I love you too. As winter descended on Boston, our relationship continued to evolve. We had our first fight about something trivial, involving dishes and laundry, that escalated into deeper issues about space and boundaries. But we learned to communicate better, to understand when to give each other space and when to come together. The holiday season brought new challenges and joys. We hosted our first Thanksgiving dinner together, inviting friends from work and Jack's sister, Sarah, who lived in New York. The apartment filled with laughter, wine, and The smell of roasting turkey. You two are disgustingly cute together, Sarah declared after her third glass of wine. But seriously, I've never seen my brother. This happy Christmas was more complicated. My parents invited us both to their home in Michigan. After much discussion, we decided to go. Are you sure? I asked Jack. As we packed, my extended family will be there. They're not all as understanding as my parents are trying to be. He kissed my forehead. I'm sure they're your family, and I want to be part of your life. All of it. The holiday was a mix of awkward moments and surprising acceptance. My teenage cousin immediately adopted Jack as her favorite, picking his brain about finance careers. My grandmother, after initial confusion, decided that as long as I was happy, she was happy. Uncle Steve made some uncomfortable comments, but Aunt Linda shut him down quickly. By New Year's Eve, we were back in Boston hosting a small party in our apartment at midnight. As our friends counted down, Jack pulled me onto the balcony. This past year has changed my life, he said, snow falling softly around us, meeting you, falling in love with you. It's been incredible, even with all the complications. I asked, thinking of the challenges we'd faced, especially with the complications. They made us stronger. He took my hands in his, which is why I want to ask you something. My heart stopped as he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. I know it might seem fast, he said, opening the box to reveal a simple silver band. But when you know, you know. Daniel, will you marry me? Time seemed to stop. Through the window I could hear our friends celebrating the New Year. Snow was collecting on Jack's eyelashes, and in that moment I knew with absolute certainty what my answer was. Yes, I whispered, then louder, yes. He slipped the ring onto my finger, and as we kissed I could taste his smile. Later that night, lying in bed, I played with the ring on my finger. What are you thinking? Jack asked, pulling me closer. About how posting that roommate ad was the best decision I ever made. He laughed. Better than saying yes to my proposal. That wasn't a decision, that was inevitable. As I drifted off to sleep in his arms, I thought about the journey that had brought me here, coming out at 27, falling in love with my roommate, discovering who I really was. It hadn't been easy, but it had been worth every moment. The next morning we woke to sunrise, painting the room gold. Jack was making coffee when I joined him in the kitchen, wrapping my arms around him from behind. So he said, turning to face me, should we start looking for a bigger apartment, one that's ours from the beginning? I smiled, thinking about all the possibilities ahead of us. I'd like that, but you know what? Would I think I'd feel at home anywhere as long as I'm with you. He kissed me, tasting of coffee and promise. Outside, Boston was waking up to a new year, and we were starting a new chapter together, from roommates to soulmates. Our story was just beginning.